If you clicked on this video, it means three things. You like Elden Ring, feeding your own hyperfixations, and tier lists. Or you put it on to fall asleep too. I don't judge, I do the same thing. Anyways, this is Bonfire Project. I'm new to making videos, and any tips or suggestions are very welcome, and let me know your Elden Ring ideas or comments below. This video is a casual playthrough of Elden Ring as I take down each Remembrance boss, analyze the fight, and rank them on a tier list. The ranking itself is based on my opinions about the bosses from worst to best, F being the worst, and S being the best. This is all done a casual playthrough of Elden Ring, no specific challenges like a strength only build or anything, just me playing through the game, looking into each boss, and kinda placing them where I think is best. Starting with the only non-Remembrance boss that I'm going to be including on this list, it's going to be Margit. I feel obligated to add him to the list because everyone's going to fight him due to him being a roadblock to Godrick. He basically functions as a tutorial boss of sorts and serves this purpose perfectly. The fight teaches you not to panic roll and how to pick more correct or safe attack windows. More importantly, it just teaches players get good. The rest of the game's not going to be easy, so here's your roadblock to get you there. When Elden Ring first released, Margit was all over the internet, almost like the face of Elden Ring. Players were getting stuck on Margit, saying he was too difficult, and I was one of them. His moveset is one that is hard to learn, but easy to master. The delayed attacks he has are designed to catch you off guard, but once you learn those big openings after the delayed attacks, the fight becomes a whole lot easier. Overall, Margit is a good boss and a very good first boss, and is the perfect fit for tutorial. With all that, I'll just let you watch the rest of the fight, and I'll get back to my yammering shortly.
Thou art of passing skill. Warrior blood must truly run in thy veins. Tarnished.
With Margit down, now it's time to rank him. Margit is a very solid opening boss that few of the FromSoft games are truly able to capture that first boss experience where it really teaches you how to play the game. Next on the chopping block is Godrick the Grafted. Godrick is the boss at the end of Stormveil Castle, the first legacy dungeon you will encounter in the game. Godrick shows us what a Remembrance boss is, and why they stand above all the others. Lots of health, harder hits, and the first two-phase boss most players will find. He isn't my favorite fight, and for some reason he feels a lot easier than Margit. His moves are very slow and telegraphed, allowing for easy dodges and punish windows. His phase 2 is a little better. He gets a dragon for a head on his arm, as well as fire attacks. Phase 2 spices things up for more of a lackluster fight. For the boss at the end of the very first legacy dungeon, I definitely expected more, but I'm not completely disappointed. For that, Godrick is going to be placed in the D tier. He's not an amazing fight by any means, but he's a good introduction to what a Remembrance boss is. The next boss is Rennala, Queen of the Full Moon. Rennala is a more difficult boss for me to rank because I dislike bosses that spam projectiles, but I think Rennala does this in a fair way, and the attacks are reactable and they allow you to close distance. But enough of that, let's get into it. Rennala is an interesting fight. The first phase is nothing special. You run around the arena, taking out the enemies that cast shield for her. Once 3 have been stopped, then she'll become vulnerable, allowing for considerable damage to be done. This has to be done 2 to 3 times usually in the first phase of the fight, but then the transition to phase 2 starts. First of all, the cutscene for phase 2 is amazing, with the arena turning into a giant ocean with the full moon in the background. The arena in the first phase was already cool, but this kind of blew it out of the water. The second phase is completely different. Rennala starts casting a ton of spells, and she even summons some enemies to help her, like dragons, giants, or even the Bloodhound Knights. The attacks look cool, but they can be a little annoying to deal with. Anyways, enjoy the rest of the fight, and I'll be back shortly with my ranking.
Mother's rich slumber shall not be disturbed by thee. Of the last queen of Caria, Rennala of the full moon.
Overall, Rennala is a solid fight, and she would rank a lot higher if the first phase wasn't so underwhelming, and if the second phase had more close combat aspects to it, but I understand why she doesn't. Rennala, Queen of the Full Moon, is going to be C tier. Following Rennala, we have Starscourge Radhan. This fight immediately stands out as a memorable one. Before you even set foot in his arena, you know it's going to be good. At the end of Redmane Castle, you're met with a large group of NPCs that are getting ready for the Radhan Festival, where all of them, including the player, will be trying to take down General Radhan in order to obtain his Great Rune. The fight begins and the player is teleported to a giant barren wasteland to defeat Radhan. The start is a long-range battle where the player needs to close the distance while gathering the help of NPCs. Once you're close to him, he starts using giant dual blades as well as some gravity magic. After a little bit, phase 2 begins, and this guy casually launches himself into orbit only to come crashing down on your ass. You can't tell me that's not cool. In phase 2, he uses a lot more of his gravity magic, and some of his attacks are very hard hitting. Here's the rest of the fight for you. I'll jump back in here at the end for my ranking. The fight comes to a close, and you find out Radhan was using his gravity magic to hold back the literal stars. Now a giant star comes crashing down onto the map, creating a whole new area. This fight is so close to S tier, but there are bosses that just stand above him, which is saying a lot. Radhan is a high A tier boss. Next up is the Regal Spirit. Off the bat, I'm just gonna say this boss is not my favorite. The Regal Ancestor is basically a giant moose with some magic. He isn't super interesting, and the fight reflects that for me. Most of the fight will be spent chasing after him and missing half of your attacks because he just won't stand still. He also has this neat trick where he teleports to the other side of the arena and then heals over half of his HP. When I first saw that, I wanted to shut my game off. There isn't a whole lot to say about this boss, so I'll just let the rest of the fight play out and I'll be back with my ranking, and I'm sure you can guess where he's going to be going. With that over, the Regal Ancestor Spirit will be placed in D tier behind Godrick. Having the Ancestor Spirit right before this boss seems to be a little bit unfair, but it's just the order that I ended up playing through the game in. Next is Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy. Rykard is a special kind of boss that FromSoft likes to add to each of their games, that being a boss focused on spectacle. When you walk into the arena, you're going to notice three things: the perfectly designed atmosphere for this boss, a special weapon for you to use, and a giant-ass snake just sitting in the middle of the arena. The spear is a weapon specifically designed for this fight. When you use it, the spear gathers solid wind around it and multiplies the length by a large amount. This is so you can fight Rykard at a distance, because he has this pool of lava that kind of sits at his feet. The first phase of the fight is nothing special. Basically, big snake try to bite you. But there is one gripe that I have with the first phase, and I think it's even in the second phase. There's a move he has where Rykard plants his head into the ground and rips it up, launching rocks and fire at you. This move's kind of bullshit, because it's basically impossible to dodge, so whenever you see him launch it, you can kind of just stand still and get ready to heal. Phase 2 is pretty good though. You find out this giant snake is actually part human. He starts to talk to you, and he pulls a giant sword made of corpses out of the snake's mouth. It's pretty cool. The fight really picks up as Rykard launches a ton of pyromancies at you while he fights you with this massive sword. Phase 2 can definitely be a little hectic, but it's manageable. The player just has to keep moving and be aware of their surroundings so they don't run into any walls. As the fight comes to a close, Rykard will charge up his sword, and he creates this giant wave of fire that will usually insta-kill the player if you can't dodge it. Now, just enjoy the rest of the fight. The yap will continue shortly. Overall, Rykard, Lord of Blasphemy, is a good fight, filled with tons of atmosphere, cool moves, and fair attacks. Rykard will be the first on the B tier of bosses. Everyone has that one boss that they just avoid fighting. That boss for me is ASStel, but I'll start with what I like about ASStel. ASStel and his arena look amazing. Something out of Bloodborne, it doesn't belong in Elden Ring, but I see what they were going for. Even the design of the attacks are cool. This guy will throw nebulas at you or use gravity magic to push you away. That's about it though. ASStel is one of those bosses that just makes you run after him for over half of the fight. You enter the arena and this asshole is a football field away from you, so you have to run all the way up to him while he launches projectiles at you. But ASStel is in a silly goofy mood, so he teleports to the other side of the arena. I hate this guy, and that sucks, because he blocks my favorite weapon in the game, the Darkmoon Greatsword, as I'm sure a lot of you like that weapon too. I have more words to describe ASStel, but YouTube would find my family, so enjoy the rest of the boss, well, as much as you can if you hate him too. I don't think I need to explain my ranking or placement any more than I already did, and I think you know where he's going. ASStel is F tier. After that atrocity of a boss, we have someone more refreshing, that being Morgott the Omen King. I know some people might disagree with me putting Morgott and Margit on the same tier list as separate bosses. I know they're basically the same person, but I think they're different enough to be placed separately. Anyways, Morgott is the boss that marks the end of the mid-game areas. Things get more difficult from here on after. Morgott is a very aggressive boss that has very few openings. His moveset is the most complex at this point in the game, and if you get caught in any of his flurry attacks, get ready to just stare at the loading screen. It's just over. In his second phase, Morgott starts to use blood flame attacks. More holy weapons are produced, and he sometimes causes the ground to explode when he hits it. To me, this fight kind of feels like a DPS race because of how fast-paced it is compared to everything else before it. I got my ass kicked by Morgott, but I'll just let you watch the rest of the fight. Now, my ranking for Morgott might be a little controversial because I really think that Margit is a better experience because of his placement in the game. Margit, basically more or less being the same boss, feels like he's in the right spot. I think that Morgott could have been placed a little later in the game, and having a more developed moveset like we can see in Elden Ring Night Rain now. But with all that, Morgott is a high B tier boss. Still good. I'm glad that Morgott was in between ASStel and this boss, so there wouldn't be so much hate back to back. But holy shit, I hate this guy. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you the worst Remembrance boss in the game, the Fire Giant. A giant asshole. I'm sure you may have noticed a pattern of how I hate when bosses run away from the player, and the Fire Giant is the Olympic gold medalist for running away. This guy's arena is a whole mountain, and he really likes to show you each square inch of it while he rolls away and has you chase him. Anyways, Phase 1 is boring. He stomps on you, swings a giant dinner plate at you, and throws fire. Oh, and don't forget the whole running away part. But, surprisingly, Phase 2 is worse. He becomes a lot more tanky and even harder to hit because he won't stop moving. He also still runs away from you and uses more fire attacks. What a great boss. I would say enjoy the rest of this fight, but it might be hard if your opinions are like mine. So, yeah. The best part about the Fire Giant is the ending. Fire Giant is the worst Remembrance boss in Elden Ring by far, and I have no remorse putting him at the very bottom of F tier. And just know, no one is going behind him. He will stay there in last by himself. I just want to take this second to say that if you've made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. I really appreciate your time. This being my first video, I already know that not many people are going to end up seeing it, but I'm okay with that. As long as the few who do watch it are entertained and want to come back for more. If anyone has any advice or criticisms, I'm ready and waiting to hear your thoughts. I have never edited before. This is the first ever editing I have done ever, whether it be for a video, schoolwork. I've never done any of this, so just really any advice helps. Also, this is going to be a two-part video. I'm going to have all the DLC bosses in part 2, and I hope to see you guys in that video too. Alright, I won't take up too much of your time. We're here to talk about Elden Ring, so let's continue. I promise you guys that Fire Giant will be the last boss that I fully hate on, I think. Anywho, next up is Lich Dragon Fortissax. I would say Fortissax is the worst of the Dragon Remembrance bosses. Now that doesn't make him bad, there's just two other dragon bosses that are leagues above him, and we'll get to one of those in this video later. Fortissax really only has one phase, but he gets a couple of moves added after about half of his health has been depleted. He's the only boss in the game that uses Deathblight Lightning, or Death Lightning, which I think is a really cool concept, and it makes him unique. But it also could have been executed a little better. I'm just not a fan of the clouds that it leaves behind. They kind of make it hard to see, and I just wish that with Death Lightning, if you were to get hit by the lightning, it would just give you a designated amount of Deathblight buildup, rather than just waiting for you to step into these clouds that obscure your vision. He also uses Ancient Dragon Lightning, which is basically regular lightning, but red. It looks cool. But my favorite thing about Fortissax is a specific move that he has. He jumps up into the air and creates this massive curved sword made out of dragon lightning. Flying down at you and swinging the lightning sword, it's just cool as hell. I'll pop back in at the end of the fight. You guys just enjoy. Overall, Fortissax is a good boss. An average dragon fight, but a good boss. Fortissax is a C tier boss. Now, I do want to preface, most of these upcoming bosses will rank fairly high, as all of them are really just higher quality. And to start that trend off, we have Mohg, the Lord of Blood. I used to really dislike fighting Mohg up until the DLC was about to release. I had heard that he would be like this last roadblock for the DLC, so I wanted to have this fight memorized. This way, I could bring low-level characters just straight into the DLC. But enough of that, this video isn't focused on the DLC bosses, that comes later. Mohg is one of those bosses that looks a lot harder than he actually is. He has so many openings, as well as items to help you, like Mohg Shackle or the Purifying Crystal tier. Phase 1 is nothing special. Mohg will usually just use Blood Flame incantations paired with normal melee combat. The transition to Phase 2 is a really unique one though. Mohg will start a countdown and mark the player. Once the countdown has reached 3, your screen will turn red as Mohg takes out 3 large chunks of your HP, forcing you to heal in between each strike. Having something like this in a fight makes the player a lot more conscious about when they should actually use their flasks, because they always have to have 3 on hand for this move, unless you're using the Purifying Crystal tier. I think that's a really neat touch. After that, Mohg becomes a lot more aggressive, flying around, launching the blood flames at the player, while weaving in some blood-infused melee attacks. Phase 2 is a fast-paced fight that usually ends pretty quickly due to his openings. Now, enjoy the rest of the fight. You know the drill by now. I'll be back. Overall, Mohg, the Lord of Blood, is a solid and enjoyable fight for me, placing him at the top of A tier. The next boss we're going to take a look at is Dragon Lord Placidusax. Before the DLC and Elden Ring released, Placidusax was my favorite dragon fight in the entire franchise, even placing above Dark Eater Midir and Kalameet. Placidusax is just a cool ass boss. You walk into his arena to see him frozen in the air, waiting for you to step forward and fight him. Speaking of the arena, this is actually my favorite in the game. A massive coliseum placed in a tornado? Like, whose high ass thought of that? I want to thank them. I'm getting distracted. In Phase 1, Placidusax will use a combination of physical melee attacks, Ancient Dragon Lightning, and some Holy Fire. This fight can take a while due to him having so much HP, but he does have a lot of openings to compensate for that. Once Phase 2 starts, Placidusax will float up into the air and teleport away, but don't worry, you won't have to run and catch him, he will come to you. Placidusax reappears in the sky to come crashing down on you with lightning calls ready. This is where I really start to enjoy the fight. The pace of this boss really speeds up as he constantly fades in and out of the view of the player, reappearing with lightning ready to slap the shit out of you. Once you get his HP low enough, he'll teleport one last time. Placidusax will fly back onto the ground and start his laser attack. This shit hits like a truck, and will usually one-shot the player, but that's okay, because it looks amazing. Here's the rest of the fight. I'll be right back. Overall, Dragon Lord Placidusax is a great boss and an amazing dragon fight. He will take Mohg's spot at the top of A tier. After 2 great bosses in a row, surely a bad one is coming up, right? Nope, because next up, we got Maliketh the Black Blade. Maliketh had the potential to rank at the top of this list, but unfortunately, his first phase is a little underwhelming. Phase 1 is the Beast Clergyman. He is an aggressive boss focused on getting up close and personal. He attacks the player with quick swipes as well as hurling rocks at you. Nothing too special about this phase. But phase 2 is fantastic. Maliketh breaks the seal Marika placed on him, giving him the power to wield the literal concept of death. This guy is basically swinging the Grim Reaper at you. Phase 2 is very fast paced, as Maliketh jumps around the pillars placed on the arena, launching projectiles at you. If the player gets hit with any of those projectiles, or just by his sword, they will receive a status effect called Destined Death, a unique status effect for this fight, and a very small amount of enemies placed throughout the game. This effect lowers your max HP and does tick damage. You really don't want to get hit by this, so avoid it as much as possible. His attacks are just so fluid, as he cartwheels around the arena, cartwheels through the air, just to bitch slap you with death itself. Anyways, enjoy the rest of the fight. I shall return. Overall, Maliketh is a fantastic boss. It just sucks that Beast Clergyman is the first phase. He would be an S tier if not for that reason, but he still falls to the top of A, stealing the spot that Placidusax took from Mohg. After Maliketh, we make our way to Leyndell, capital of Ash, where Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, or Hoarah, is waiting for us. This is an all-around good fight. Each phase is super fast-paced, as Godfrey will consistently keep pressure on the player by closing any distance between them. Phase 1 Godfrey is my favorite part about this boss fight. This part of the fight has a perfect rhythm to it. What I mean by that is the player is able to safely attack in between Godfrey's moves, whether it might be him using any jumping attacks, stomps on the floor, or being able to strafe his attacks to get a little poke in. This makes the fight feel as if there is always something happening. A fight like Phase 1, where your attention every second matters, is what I think all bosses should strive to be like. Godfrey even has a Phase 1.5, where his moveset changes a little bit, making it so his stomps cover the entire arena, forcing the player to dodge. It's a nice touch on an already good fight. But then comes Phase 2, Hoarah. This phase is where Godfrey receives the nickname Elden Chad. It's very fitting. Hoarah is built like a brick house and will suplex your ass if you get caught. If I'm being honest though, I think Phase 1 is better. Now, Hoarah is nowhere near a bad fight, by any means, but I think it had the potential to be a perfect fight. If you have played through the Dark Souls 3 DLCs, you'll get the idea I'm going for here. In Dark Souls 3, there's a boss named Slave Knight Gale. In his second phase, when he swings his sword, his cape kind of always follows up as a secondary hit. I think that Sarash, the lion on Godfrey's back, should have had this function for his second phase. I think it would have been way more intuitive and a lot more fun than Hoarah. But I'll stop yapping. Here's the rest of the fight for you. Hoarah Loux is a great boss that has very little flaws, so with that, he's gonna go in high A tier. I bet you thought that Radhan and Elden Beast would actually be the last boss I was gonna talk about, but I'm saving you-know-who for last, because I did something a little different for them. I find it difficult to rank these two bosses because I have such varying opinions on them. Radhan is a good boss with good music, fair attacks, and a complex moveset, but Elden Beast is another one of those bosses that just runs away from the player. He's a piece of shit. But back to Radhan. Radhan keeps the theme going of hyper-aggressive bosses. As soon as the fight begins, he'll either charge you or launch some projectiles towards you, and the fight maintains that pace up until Radhan is defeated. He will teleport around the arena, creating AoE explosions, use fast melee attacks, and a ton of holy attacks as well. Radhan is the perfect final boss for Elden Ring, but he got paired with one of the worst bosses for Phase 2, the Elden Beast. Elden Beast is a very similar case to ASStel. I say that because the boss, his arena, and the attacks he has have an amazing design to them. Honestly, it's one of the most visually appealing bosses in the entire game. However, also like ASStel, this piece of shit constantly runs away from the player, leaving the player with two options: chasing him or standing there like an asshole until he comes back. It's really just a shame because he looks so damn good and he's paired with Radhan. I'm sure you get the idea, but here's the rest of the gameplay. and I really hate to do this, but Radagon would be an A or B tier boss alone, but since he's placed with Elden Beast, they are going to be placed in the middle of C tier. Now, the reason I saved Malenia, Blade of Mikola, for last is because I wanted to give you guys my fully unedited first attempt of gameplay. This fight really came down to the wire. That S tier is still looking rather empty. Is Malenia going to be the first one to place in there? I guess we'll see. Now, Malenia is many things. The hardest boss in the game, a thrilling, crazy fast-paced fight, a perfect two-phase boss with great cutscenes, but most importantly, she's the goddamn Blade of Mikola, which she will most likely remind you plenty of times. The fight begins and she immediately goes for your throat, setting the tone for the rest of the fight. Oh, and she also heals a small amount of her HP anytime that she hits you, so enjoy that. Malenia's Phase 1 is full of flurry attacks, hard-hitting gap closers, and a very controversial move, the Waterfowl Dance. Now, I'll be honest, as a beginner, when I saw this move start up, I just put my controller down because I had no idea what to do to avoid it. But after my almost 1,000 hours I've put into this game on console, I kinda had to learn, especially during my level 1 playthrough. Once Waterfowl Dance is no longer an issue for you, the brick wall that is Malenia kinda comes crumbling down. The fight becomes more reactable, letting the player be the one who puts the pressure on. This is until Phase 2 at least, where Malenia sprouts wings, taking on the form of the Goddess of Rot. She now has huge AoE attacks mixed into her moveset, and she also applies Scarlet Rot buildup on each one of her attacks. And she also still has the HP restoring mechanic. So it's basically Phase 1, just with a bunch of middle fingers attached to it. But I just have to say that I love this fight. I really can't deny that this is my favorite boss in the Elden Ring base game. I find myself being so focused on this fight that it actually gets my heart beating at an unhealthy rate. But with that, enjoy the fully unedited gameplay for one last time, and I'll see you guys shortly. I'm guessing that most of you already know where Malenia sits on this tier list. In my opinion, she's almost a near perfect boss, and the only boss in the base game that will be placed at S tier. And with that, the final piece of my boss tier list is done. With all the bosses being placed on the tier list now, I'm gonna make some minor adjustments. Now that's a better reflection of my final opinions for all the Remembrance bosses in Elden Ring. I hope that you guys enjoyed the video as well as my yapping. And as I said before, I'm really looking forward to hearing all of your thoughts in the comments. I will be responding to every single one of them. And if you enjoyed this content, consider tapping all those fancy buttons below. I'm happy with the way this video turned out, but I hope to improve my work in the future. Speaking of the future, part 2 for this video will hopefully be put out in a week or two. I definitely have some interesting opinions on the DLC bosses. For instance, maybe here's one example for you guys. Anyways, this has been Bonfire Project, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care.